comments, let's talk through them.
Well, thank you very much for letting us be on the agenda for tonight. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the Hilton Rock Foundation or the Bluff Fort. I'll just take a minute or two about that before we discuss our request, if that's all right.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
The Hilton Rock Foundation, a private nonprofit organization chartered with the federal government in 2006. We have a board of directors. We have service missionaries that serve as volunteers at their own expense, some for 6 months, some for a year, some for 2 years or more. And they are guides and hosts at the fort itself. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints recognizes this as a historic site. However, they have no ownership. They have no money invested. They are very supportive of what we're doing, but this is totally a private organization. We're operated almost entirely by donations from donors. We also charge no admission for visitors. A year before COVID, we had 50,000 visitors who signed in. We figure about 25% visited without signing in. We're now getting a few hundred every day after COVID. In terms of this particular request to extend or to create from a previous structure an apartment for a volunteer couple, most of our, in fact, virtually all of our volunteers are coming as couples. And this is on the property that we refer to as the Jens Nielsen property. It's across the street from the fort footprint. That property does receive or pay property tax for the grounds and for the house. My tax notice indicates that the town of Bluff receives a portion of that property tax, gives it 3 zeros and a 715% of whatever the amount is. What we're putting up, have the members ever read our application with respect to the structure?
Yes, sir, we have.
Yes, we have.
Okay.
Yes.
I just think a point of importance is we converted an apartment that was on the Bluff Fort footprint in order to enhance the safety and the capabilities of a wood shop we have here. So we are extending what was previously owned, previous owners used sometimes as a hired employee's place to live and otherwise as storage. And we'd like to just extend that out. We're going to preserve a significant part of the structure that's there now. Did I have a question?
No, sir, keep going. You're fine.
All right. So this is not going to increase the number of people involved, nor is it going to increase the number of apartments we have. It will just accommodate across the street one more apartment where we already have 4 apartments. And the construction primarily will be done by a certified state licensed construction company, the plumbing by a state certified plumber, electricians by a combination of Rocky Mountain Power and Northern Electric Company. And we're hoping to just be able to get permission here, follow whatever steps you all have in mind. And we have no paid employees except one, Marie Begay, who is our restroom cleaner. We charge no admission for visitors. So with that, if you've reviewed our application, I'll be happy to expand on it or answer any questions.
Madam Chair, motion to approve.
Just a minute, Ed. Let's
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions from commissioners.
Yeah, I
All right.
definitely do, Sarah.
Okay, go ahead, Marcia.
Thank you. I'm sorry that I can't see, or you can't see me with my hands flying as usual, but I just want to put forward a couple of comments and questions. The first comment I have, well, no, let's go to the question. You just said, Mr. Stevens, that there's already 4 apartments, which are those apartments in the old converted garage, which LaRue had done years ago. And then the little building off to the side where you want to expand, would that make 5 apartments then? You have 4 in the little? Okay. The next question is, or most important in my mind, and that is that the building in question sits improperly on the lot with regard to setbacks. It doesn't meet any of the setbacks to the yards. And therefore, it's a non-conforming use that you cannot just change and add to. Because if you look at the town ordinance for non-conforming use, it says shall not be expanded in scope or extent. It can be expanded within the building, like if you fix up the use inside, but you cannot do any construction or anything else that changes it because it is not a conforming building. So I believe that this doesn't meet the requirements to be added onto. The last, and by the way, just for clarification or for transparency, I guess, I should say that this does abut part of my yard on the corner, my personal land yard, but that's not my concern. It's not a concern in that it has existed like that the whole time we've lived there. So I'm not arguing that there's an existing shed there or place there. I'm just arguing that literally for non-conforming, it does not fit. The last comment I would make is directed more at my team of planning and zoning commissioners than to Mr. Stevens, and that is that I think this is a very good demonstration of a discussion of density, of how many things happen on a lot. And I'm not going to comment yes or no, but I just think this is something that shows that we've had this discussion, and I'm not sure where we've gone with it. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Marcia. Melissa?
Yeah, thanks for noting that, Marcia. And maybe we need to pull up the text about what's written in the ordinance about that. Just I think to review what Marcia said, I think there's a consideration there that needs to be addressed with the existing setbacks and then the proposal to extend, and making sure that we are all just reading the same text in that way. Thanks for raising that, Marcia. Second, Mr. Stevens, on the application, it lists the property owner as the Jens House LLC. I see your name here as the person submitting the project information as well as the project contact. And then I see a document in here also that states that the Hole in the Rock Foundation's Vice President, Mike Roaring, is giving permission for you to speak on behalf of the foundation. But I'm wondering, as a technicality, who actually owns the property and has the right then to be authorizing any kind of build on that property. Just based on those documents, it's not clear to me if the foundation is also the Jens House LLC, or if that's you, or if that's another entity. So just making sure that we've covered those bases as well. Thanks.
Do you want me to respond to that? I thought we were going to be in person. I have certificate of authority that the Hole in the Rock Foundation headed up by me as the president in this formal document, legal document. It says the signatory of this certificate certifies that he is currently the acting president, chairman of the board, has full authority to execute the same on behalf of the corporation pursuant to the resolution of the board of directors of the corporation, that the foregoing statements are correct. Now, we've had a board meeting. I have unanimous approval from the other members of the board to represent the Hole in the Rock Foundation, as well as legal documents that I can represent the Hole in the Rock Foundation on public activities and business transactions. So I'll be very happy to provide these certificates to wherever you want me to deliver them.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. I do see the document in here provided from the Hole in the Rock Foundation. I'm just noting that on the application, it shows property owner as the Jens House LLC. So just making sure that we understand which entities are involved. I hope that was more clear. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Melissa, I agree. Mr. Stevens, is the Jens Nielsen LLC under the Hole in the Rock Foundation?
Yes. This, one of the certificates says the following entity is subject to the certificate of authority, Jens House LLC, a Utah Limited Corporation company.
Oh, okay. Then that answers I think, Melissa, doesn't it, if it's under the Hole in the Rock?
Yeah, I'm just announcing and acknowledging that we see the document that shows authorization for the Hole in the Rock Foundation, but we're not seeing the line of then the property ownership, and it's listed on the document as the Jens House. I understand what's been stated verbally, so I'm not trying to say it's not. I'm just saying we just don't see that in any of the documentation that's provided to us. I hope that makes sense.
That's correct. I received these documents from our attorney after we submitted the initial application with Mr. Roaring's assurance that I had the authority to respond to this, to request what we're asking for.
Sarah, perhaps we could just ask Mr. Stevens to submit it to our paperwork.
Yes.
Yes, I'll be happy to do that.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate that. And then to follow up on Marcia's concern about non-conforming use, I have found it in the zoning code. So let me read it to you guys. I will also stop sharing and share this tab so you can see where I'm reading from. You guys now see the ordinance?
Yes.
Let me get a little bit larger. A little bit larger. Okay, so this is in non-conforming uses. So a non-conforming use is defined to mean a use of land that does not conform to current land regulations that legally existed before the enactment of the applicable regulations, which has been continuously maintained, which you guys qualify in this sense. Now, Marcia's referring to item D, which says a non-conforming use shall not be expanded in scope or extent, except that it may be extended throughout an existing building or structure, provided that no structural alteration is made. In the event of any extension of non-conforming use throughout an existing building or structure, all construction shall be performed in compliance with applicable building, zoning codes, and health codes. The addition of solar energy devices to a building is not a structural alteration. So reading section D, I think I have to agree with Marcia that because this building is non-conforming, we can't approve an expansion of it. We can approve a remodel within the existing structure, but not an expansion of the structure.
Thank you, Sarah. I agree.
I'm
Can I comment on that?
Yes, sir.
The structure had a leaking roof and had termites in the walls, which we destroyed. There is a concrete segment of the structure that will remain. The addition will not be any nearer the fence in either direction, only just straight forward out into this open space in front of the building.
Mr. Stevens, I'm sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Marcia.
Mr. Stevens, that actually doesn't matter. What we're talking about is the existing structure does not sit properly on the lot according to any new town ordinances, and therefore we don't need to make you take it down in any way. We just aren't letting you do anything else to it. to add to it, because it makes no difference that you're adding something. You'd be adding something to something that shouldn't be there or shouldn't be where it is. So while you might be able to update and clean up inside to make it work a little better, you may not add on to it according to non-conforming use. That is our interpretation, or at least mine at the moment, and Sarah's. We haven't voted, but that's what I'm saying we would do.
And just to Mr. Stevens, this is, as we go through these processes, we learn a little bit every time. And I don't know, one of the things we can maybe talk about is what your recourse is beyond the decision here, and we can address that as well. But just looking at what the ordinance says, and that's really all our commission, we're kind of bound to make decisions based on what the ordinance says. And reading it, I interpret it as you can remodel the inside, but you can expand. And then, of course, we as a commission can vote on that, and then we can discuss what next steps would be.
Well, I guess my question is, what is my recourse there? And I think that that particular element of your town council was approved by some element, maybe your town board. I'd be happy to appeal that to the town board in this case. I think grandfathering, particularly in a pioneer environment and a historical site, is worthy of being considered for grandfathering the use of the building.
Yes,
As far as density of structures on the front premise, we won't increase the density. It's already there.
And density is not density is a tangential question. It's not, that's not what's being addressed here tonight. We're just trying to address whether or not this remodel is in compliance. And yes, your recourse would be to appeal this to town council. Town council is the appealant body. Luann's asking, what is the setback of the existing building? And it looks like from the drawing that you have 8 feet from the rear property line and 9 feet from the side property.
And it's supposed to be 15 and 15. Mr. Stevens, the grandfathered part is the idea that the building exists and we're not telling you to take that down in any way because it is grandfathered. What doesn't get grandfathered is any changes or additions, because that is by implication new. So we're not telling you the building can't exist. We're telling you you can't add to it. Or we haven't told you that yet. We're discussing it, and then we would make a motion and vote. But the discussion is that you can't change it.
Well, thank you very much. I realize I've made the case. I hope you will approve it tonight. If not, well, then I will go to the town council with an explanation of why this is in special interest, particularly the town of Bluff, among other things. You'll receive tax proportion for that property as well, but we'll just have to make the case if you're going to vote against the expansion forward into the forward space of always there.
We understand, Mr. Stevens. Melissa?
Yeah.
Mr. Stevens, just one more question. It looks like in the application, looks like the request is for a 600 square foot building, but looking at the document and the plans provided, it looks like with the addition of the structure, proposed structure, the math comes out just under 600 square feet. So just making sure that we even have those correct dimensions. Wondering if we can just double check some of those dimensions too. I don't think that changes the setbacks. It looks like on the drawing, it looks like it would run parallel with existing structural boundaries. But just kind of making a note of some of that, the question on like what is actually happening. And if 600 square feet means the entire building is going to change, regardless of the conversation about setbacks, I'd like to understand that further. or if it's just
The-
literally just kind of remodeling, like you said, the roof part, but then the addition. So just checking in on those dimensions. Thanks.
Right, the dimensions are quite accurate, and the existing structure, which has concrete walls, is about 1/3 of the total. The portion that was previously, we actually disassembled, tore down the other structure, the front part, which was about 12 or 14 feet forward, because it was not only unsafe, it was infested with termites and was not habitable for humans. So that was the motivation.
Yeah, thinking, I guess that brings up another question. If the structure, I haven't looked if the structure or that piece of the structure is already demolished, if going forward means other considerations about remodeling or building onto that if the structure doesn't exist in its complete form. I think that raises the question that was related to the non-conforming use that was brought up, Part D.
That's an excellent question, Melissa. Mr. Stevens, did the roof just get replaced in place, or did you in fact knock down the structure and start again? I guess we're not quite clear on what happened, because if in fact it was knocked down, you didn't get permission to put it back up. I'm just a little confused. I'm sorry.
The purpose of this meeting is to get permission to put a new roof on the entire length of the new building. So that now the roof is gone. We also had to eliminate a lot of tree limbs and things that were encroaching and causing problems with the structure as it was.
Well, Mr.
Right
Stevens,
now,
go ahead. No, go ahead. You were going to say right now.
The existing structure that is still there does not have a roof on it.
Okay. But you haven't built an addition to that, have you?
No, we haven't until
Okay.
the drawing you have there includes that structure as well as a new portion out front.
Okay.
It's totally new, but it's not totally unprecedented, because about half of the new structure was there already. It was not habitable.
Okay, so at this moment, you have the four walls of the old structure ready to put a roof on, but before you put the roof on, you were planning to extend it. That's kind of what I think you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay. In that case, Madam Chair, if you are ready, I would make a motion to deny the request for an extension to an existing non-conforming building, with the caveat that the roof can be replaced because it was structural damage that can be repaired on the existing building.
Thank you, Marcia.
Can I just clarify that motion? So Marcia, may I clarify the motion?
Of
Yes,
course.
So Marcia, are you motioning to approve that the roof can be rebuilt for the existing structure? So it looks like those dimensions, let me go back.
I don't.
It would be like the 24 by, looks like 18.5 according to the documents. You're talking about just the existing structure's roof, but you're not approving any kind of addition or extension in your motion. Am I correct?
That is correct. And I'm doing that because I believe that the existing building is grandfathered, because of, even though it sits improperly, it is grandfathered, but I do not want to allow continued building, and that because that means that they're adding on. So I'm willing to, in the picture for me of the non-conforming building is they have the right to fix it, but they don't have the right to expand it. So that's what I'm trying to do with my motion. And I'm sorry to keep talking because we need a second to talk about it.
Thanks for letting me clarify. I'll second the motion so we can vote.
Thank you, Melissa. I do. I think they can save the building because it's been there, but they can't change it.
May I comment?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Stevens.
We completely removed the front portion of the previously existing building because of the termites. If we were to completely replace that same space with a new building, that would not be, I mean, are you prohibiting even returning it to the original footprint with roof and walls?
No, sir.
Is we-
You can, so based on, that's an excellent question. Let me try to share this with you. Based on the ordinance, sorry, let me share the correct tab. Okay, with a non-conforming structure, and I'm going to assume that this was done within the last year, right? So then that brings us to section E. If a non-conforming use is interrupted by fire, flood, or other calamity, so in your case, water damage plus termite damage, right? We'll just consider that a calamity. It may be restored, provided that the restoration is completed no later than a year from the date that the calamity that caused the use was discontinued. Any restoration of a non-conforming use shall comply with this subsection. So, with the assumption that you are replacing the original building within the year of the calamity, then you can replace to the existing footprint. The problem that we're having is okaying your expansion of the footprint. So the motion right now, the motion on the table, is to deny the expansion of the footprint of a non-conforming use. It's been seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to say something.
Go ahead, Ed.
I'm going to vote with Marcia and so on. And the thing that occurs to me is in the last meeting, in the minutes, we show that we recommended that an applicant consider the possibility of seeking a variance, and it would probably be reasonable to say that here as well.
Thank you, Ed. So, Mr. Stevens, well, let's vote, and then we'll talk about it as well. So, the motion on the table is to deny this land use application on the grounds that it is an expansion of a non-conforming use. All in favor, say aye.
Wait a minute, Sarah.
What?
The motion is actually to allow the LUC that we could allow would be for the roof on the existing and reconstructing the existing footprint. I want to make sure that we're telling them that they can do something, they just can't do what they asked. So if my wording is bad.
Okay, so let me say it again. So denying the expansion of a non-conforming use, but allowing the restoration of the existing footprint.
Perfect.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Melissa,
Aye.
you're looking ahead at me.
Did Melissa have a question? Wait a minute.
Yeah, I think so.
I think we just read that part E that talked about a calamity and a time frame of the calamity. So I don't think we can. I don't know how we do this part because I don't want to confuse the vote with the motion. But I think we need to be careful about saying that we're motioning to approve the roof if we don't know the time frame of that calamity. So I that like.
So Melissa,
Did I misunderstand?
I would agree with you. I feel like, I think personally for clarity, I feel like, especially if Mr. Stevens is going, to appeal this to the town council, I feel like we should be looking at this land use clearance. This land use clearance is asking for an expansion. Can we approve this land use clearance? Yes or no?
Excellent.
If we can't, then a new submission of a land use clearance in the future.
Excellent point. That's
Okay.
So do I rescind my second or?
yeah.
do
I would like to rescind my motion and And I would make another one in a minute if Melissa will pull her second and take it off the table.
So, but is that the process? I'm not familiar with the Robert's rules that
Yeah.
deeply. Am I doing the right thing? Like, or like, how do we relieve this motion?
Yes,
Do we
yes,
have to
Melissa.
sign it?
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah,
Melissa.
so Melissa, would you like to rescind your second?
Is that what we do? Then I'll
Yes,
rescind
yes.
second to
The
just.
motion is now taken off the table. That motion is gone.
Okay,
So, Marcia, would
yes.
you like to rescind your motion?
Okay. For the item request by Mr. Stevens for an LUC as proposed, I make a motion to deny that request.
Second.
Okay, and then we can talk about good ideas for the future. Okay,
Okay. All in favor of denying this request, say aye.
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 Aye. So motion is denied unanimously.
No, the motion is passed, but the
So the
application.
motion is passed. Well, you're right. Thanks, Ed. The motion is passed unanimously. The application is denied. Mr. Stevens, your recourse would be two things. You can seek, you can appeal to town council. That is the appealant body. You can also look into applying for a variance. And if you meet those requirements, you can fill in a variance form and submit that to us. The other, what we were discussing that got a little confusing on the other end is we would like to see, if you would like to put the roof on and rebuild the portion of the building that was destroyed from the original footprint, we're asking that you submit a new land use clearance for that request.
And agreed that Melissa's point about telling us some timing and references to that would be helpful, just to make sure we follow this process of we had to take down the roof, but it was this year, etc. So just when you, Mr. Stevens, if you bring us another idea, just make sure you give us a little timeline to help us understand. Thank you.
May I comment?
Yes, sir.
Part of that, I think, is totally unachievable if you're going to try to determine how and when termites made the place uninhabitable. I would like very much to have the timeline, if there's going to be one, begin now.
The
We don't
time,
know when the roof started to leak. We don't know when the termites started to devour the walls. We don't know when it became uninhabitable for human.
I think we could start the timeline from demolition. So when did you take the roof, take the walls?
yes, yes.
2 weeks ago,
Yeah, so then your timeline started 2 weeks ago.
1st of August.
Yeah.
Just called the 1st of August.
Okay. Luann, did you have a comment? Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Luann, you're muted.
Sorry, I do have a comment, and I'm just listening. I'm not a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, but just watching the information go by, it seems to me like maybe the confusion is in the drawing. It shows an addition to that, and it's actually not an addition. It's possibly, that's what I'm not clear on. It's possibly under the same roof, but wanting to put an apartment under the same roof. And so if that's the case, that would be a different land use clearance to put the roof back on over the existing structure, is what I understand it to be. So anyway, Mr. Stevens, if you can clarify that when you come back with your next application, I think that will help, because it at least was confusing to me whether it's brand new, sticking out the end of what's there, or if it's under what you actually already have.
So Luann, I can address that, and Mr. Stevens did address that in his letter. And I can share it. Give me just a minute to share the right things. Okay. And Mr. Stevens, I'm addressing the letter that you sent that kind of talks us through the remodel. And you have number 4. We are using the original footprint of the structure, but would like to extend the front of it an additional 8 feet to the south.
That's correct.
So it is in fact a true addition off the original structure. off the original footprint.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thanks, Lloyd, for making sure we're all on the same page. Mr. Stevens, do you have any other questions about where you go from here?
I just have a question. Does this same body tonight have the authority to grant a variance, or does the town council have that?
That's a good question. Where does that lie? Does anybody remember? If you got a variance, you'd be the very first one. Melissa thinks it's us.
Thought that's how it went.
It's
Marcia,
us.
remember that?
Yeah, it is. It's the Planning and Zoning Commission, and we meet the variance based on the criteria as listed. And Mr. Stevens, if you go to the variance request, you will see the things that you need to meet in order to ask us or to meet the request for variance.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We have about 10 minutes left in this meeting. I'm gonna move us on to our next agenda item. Thank you, Mr. Stevens, for coming to the meeting and answering so many questions. We appreciate you taking the time. Very quickly,
Thank
thank you, Mr. Stevens. Very quickly, we'll go over the update on planning and zoning term vacancy notification. I'm gonna share the notification that Aaron has created, just so you guys can kind of see it. If there's any problems, you guys can tell me now and we can rework it. But the idea is that we'll get this posted pretty soon. It'll also kind of help us look at our timeline.
I think
go ahead, Marcia.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's a good list. It talks about what it is we do. And I just want to emphasize to people that are interested that it's important to understand that we don't just, willy-nilly do this. We have to go through these kind of permutations to make things happen. So I kind of like it, but.
Yeah, thanks, Marcia. The other big piece that I'll kind of direct your attention to is kind of our timeline. So the idea is that this would be posted pretty soon. And then folks who are interested would email their letter of interest by the 16th, with the idea that we would have interviews September 21st, which would be our next regular meeting. We don't meet the first week of September because of Labor Day. So we'll meet the following Wednesday, which would be the 21st. So that would give folks, several weeks to get their information in. And the idea would be that we would hopefully conduct interviews and then make a recommendation to town council at that point. And if not, we would move it to our October meeting as well.
I like it.
Okay.
Madam Chair, question?
Go ahead, Ed.
I don't think the last meeting's minutes said anything about which seats are up. Should the minutes indicate that this time?
Oh, who is not continuing? Is that what you mean?
Well, whose seats are up, yeah.
Yeah, so my seat will be vacated. I'm not seeking an additional term. And then Amanda and Melissa's term will expire in November, and so they'll have to make the decision if they want to continue. I think Amanda has already sent notice saying that she will continue on planning and zoning.
Mine's forthcoming. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, that's fine, Miss Melissa. So at this point, we're looking at for sure one vacancy, and then when you guys when the new members are added in January is when you'd actually select your leadership. So that's where you guys can do, chair, vice chair, that kind of stuff would be selected from the new commissioners.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, so chair will be vacant, so you guys can choose a new chair in January.
Did you say that with glee?
A tiny bit,
A little bit of
a
glee.
little bit of glee. I have enjoyed doing this, but I think it will be a lot to try to continue it come January. Let's see. Any other discussion on this or questions about?
Is Erin going to go ahead and post it as soon as she gets here, or what are we doing?
I think so. I will, you know what, I'll send an email to Anne and just be like, hey, Anne, let's post it. Because I don't know. Usually it goes through either Amanda or Erin, and both of them are out until the end of the week. So I think just so long as someone posts it in the next week or so, we're good.
Great.
Good question. Okay, so since there's nothing we want to change on that, we're going to move on to, where's my agenda? We're going to move on to vacancy interview process and questions. And I'll share the questions. Amanda shared these out with you guys last time or last week, but you should have them again. Oh, I did it wrong. Let me do it again. We can, of course, keep the questions we've used before, or we can add more. But these are the questions that we've asked the last maybe 2 times. I think we've done interviews twice now. And the way we did it, you can see that we've put our names and we just did a round robin. So at the time, it was 3 commissioners interviewing for 2 positions. And so we just asked a question and then moved it to the next person. That way everyone has a moment to kind of ask the question. But we do, for equity, we do ask each applicant the same questions. So they get the same amount of time to answer the questions, and we ask them all the same questions. Go ahead, Marcia.
Well, I was thinking I like these basic questions. They're good. Do you want us to bring forward like our version of this question if there's something we wanted to ask or something? I wasn't quite sure if I was supposed to be, adding or editing or doing whatever.
I mean, I think I would say let's try to keep it very basic.
Right.
But if there's something you feel like is not being asked that needs to be asked, that would be something we can add. So that would be, so if you're like, number 5 kind of asks what I want, but not quite, you can add something to it. Or if you're like, oh, I really wish we'd asked a whole nother question, so let's add a number 8. But the big thing is that we're asking each applicant the same questions.
Agreed.
So it's not like one applicant gets like, what's your favorite color? And then next one gets like, what's your stance on subdivisions? Or,
Yep. Great. No, that's fine. There wasn't much I wanted to change. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to be doing. Thank you.
You're welcome. I would say if there's things you want to clarify, put those in writing so that we kind of clarify them to all applicants.
Perfect.
And as we get closer, I think what I'll do is I'll send this list around and we'll just let everyone choose one question. And then if you're like really want to ask 2 questions, we can just put your name next to it. That way we've got everyone's asking at least one question. The way we did it last time, of course, we set up, we had 3, well, you guys were there. You were part of the interview process.
Yes.
We had 3 interviewees. We went through the questions with each person, and then we voted, and we did it through, since we're virtual, we actually wrote down the names of the candidates we wanted to recommend, and then we sent that recommendation to town council.
Sounds good.
Okay. And if there's, like I said, if you guys want to change the process, now's the time. You have 2 minutes to tell me how we're changing it.
I think we'll be fine. And if it turns out, for example, there are 20 applicants or something weird happens, we can always fine tune it just before the meeting, like splitting the schedule or doing something weird. In other words, we don't know what might happen, but based on what we see, it sounds like it'll work fine.
I think it'll be good. Because we have only 2 minutes left, I would like to table discussion on the application form for site plan.
Agreed.
Okay. Melissa's nodding as well. So we'll table that. If we have time in our September meeting, we can tack it on after interviews. But right now, and we can talk about this too. So I'm going to go on down to items for next agenda. The items are going to be interviews. And then if we get through interviews quickly enough, we'll do the land use, or we'll do land use clearances, interviews, and then the application for site plan.
Yes.
Those will be our items. Go ahead, Melissa.
I mean to interrupt your train of thought.
No,
I
go
just
ahead.
want to double check we were talking about the right meeting date. Looking at my calendar, the next first Wednesday of September looks, or of the month of September looks like the 7th, which is the week of Labor Day. So the third Wednesday would be the 21st. I'm just making a note that we're talking about the right dates, with a caveat that if there's something that's pressing, we can consider a special session if we need one, but just making sure we're on the same page that way.
Yes, thank you, Miss Melissa. I am saying our next meeting will be September 21st. No meeting the week of Labor Day. And yes, if we need to have a special session, we can. I would kind of like to go ahead and ask you guys for permission now to maybe make the 21st meeting an hour and a half. I'm getting
Yes.
a thumbs up from Melissa. Marcia's saying yes. Okay. So let's go ahead and make the plan that one will be slightly longer. If we don't need the whole half hour, we won't use it, but that'll give us hopefully plenty of time to address land use clearances if we have any, and then give plenty of time to applicants. Anything else we need to discuss before we adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All right. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Aye. Motion to adjourn passes unanimously. It is 7:01 p.m. Thank you guys very much for